Welcome back to the Urban Herald. I'm your host. Today, we're tackling a question that, frankly, it's been keeping a lot of strategists, maybe even some of you, up at night.
Hmm.
It really hit home for Europe, didn't it, back in September 2025? Remember when those Russian drones deliberately flew into Polish airspace?
Oh, absolutely. That triggered NATO's Article 4, first time ever. A huge moment.
Exactly. And it forces this question, are we, right now, actually fighting World War III, but just without fully realizing it, without the big declarations we expect?
It's a deeply unsettling thought, yeah. And here at the Urban Herald, as part of the team, our goal is always to try and cut through that noise, bring some clarity to these incredibly complex global shifts.
Right.
And today, this isn't just some hypothetical exercise. We're really diving deep, trying to unpack what seems to be a really profound shift in warfare itself.
How war is fought.
Precisely. What we thought we understood about global conflict, about what a world war even means, well, it feels like it's being completely rewritten right in front of us. It's evolving into something, frankly, much more insidious than I think most people imagine.
That's spot on. So our mission today really is to pull back the curtain on this kind of hidden reality of modern global conflict.
Mm.
We need to move past those old images, right?
Mm-hmm.
The black and white footage, the massed armies, the clear declarations of war.
The cinematic version.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
What seems to be actually happening is much more fragmented. It's driven by technology. It's this drip-by-drip struggle that's just systematically blurred the lines between what feels like peace and what is actually conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll explore the evidence that's mounting. We'll look at these new kinds of battlefields and crucially talk about what this strange new reality means for you, for our listeners, in your day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and prepare for maybe some aha moments, hopefully, because we're going to try and connect events that might seem totally isolated on the surface. A cyber attack over here, a proxy skirmish somewhere else.
Right.
And link them to this much larger and, let's be honest, pretty unsettling pattern. This deep dive should help you see why what's happening globally isn't just a random series of crises.
It's connected.
It feels like components of a single, pervasive, evolving conflict. And that demands we completely rethink what a world war actually looks like in the 21st century. It's subtle, much more subtle, and maybe even more disturbing than the old scenarios we grew up with.
Okay, so let's really get into this core idea, something we've been tracking meticulously here at the Urban Herald. This argument that World War III might, in fact, already be happening.
Right.
But it's not the big, obvious, territory-grabbing war with flags and bugles we picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's this drip-by-drip thing. Fragmented, technology-fueled, and deliberately designed to fly under the radar of conventional warfare.
Precisely. And that forces us, doesn't it? It forces us to fundamentally question what is a world war now in this century.
Yeah.
It's clearly not about those dramatic, overt declarations anymore, or, armies sweeping across continents to seize land. It feels more like a gradual, almost creeping process across multiple interconnected domains.
Less like a big bang.
Yeah, less like an explosion and more like a slow burning fire. Or maybe a kind of systemic erosion, just gradually wearing down the international order we've known.
And if you just look at how warfare itself has changed, the contrast between, say, World War I or II and these modern hybrid conflicts we're seeing now, it's night and day, isn't it?
Absolutely stark.
We used to think about geographically defined battles.
Right.
Clear front lines on a map.
Mm-hmm.
But now the geographic scope is described as desterritorialized, which basically means the battlefield isn't just there on the ground confined by borders. It's potentially everywhere.
And those boundaries, the lines between war and peace, between combatant and civilian, which seemed so clear before, they're just incredibly blurred now.
Yeah.
Think about traditional warfare. You had state versus state primarily. They used conventional military forces, tanks, planes, ships.
Right.
Alliances were pretty clear-cut. You knew who your allies were, who the enemies were. Engagement was mostly direct military confrontation.
And you usually have a formal declaration of war.
Usually, yes. And the battlefield was, a specific place, a location on the map today.
Yeah.
All of that has been turned on its head. It reflects this world that's hyper-connected technologically, but maybe more fragmented politically.
So you're saying this isn't just like new tactics, it's a whole new way of thinking about global competition itself.
I think it is, yeah.
Instead of just state A versus state B, now you've got multiple states and non-state actors, militias, corporations, hackers, all involved.
Right, all playing a role.
And the forces involved aren't just armies. They're using these hybrid methods, blending conventional military moves with Cyber attacks, disinformation, economic pressure,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
and those old solid alliances. Now it seems more like shifting networks of proxies, often transactional, you scratch my back.
Opportunistic, exactly. Based on immediate needs rather than long-term treaties sometimes.
And the fighting itself is often indirect, right? Channeled through these proxies, specifically to avoid that direct superpower clash.
Avoids escalation.
And formal declarations of war. Now we live in this world of ambiguous conflicts where the lines are deliberately fuzzy.
Intentionally blurred.
So the battlefield isn't just land, sea, and air anymore. It's this multi-domain space, includes cyber, space, the economy, information, even people's minds. It's fascinating how completely this changes the game for global dominance. It's way beyond just military muscle now. It touches almost everything.
It really is a strategic evolution, and its purpose is to systematically erode those old boundaries between war and peace. This hybrid approach, it combines the conventional stuff, soldiers, tanks, with cyber warfare, really sophisticated disinformation campaigns, powerful economic pressure, and, as you said, extensive use of these proxy forces.
Yeah.
And the main goal isn't always that quick, decisive victory like taking a capital city. It's often about creating long-term instability, keeping conflicts simmering at a low intensity, and just gradually achieving political goals through this constant, persistent pressure over time. Years, maybe decades.
Which brings us beautifully, if chillingly, to this drip-by-drip idea.
Yeah.
Such a powerful analogy. Like that old, awful image of Chinese water torture.
Yeah.
Individually, each drop seems like nothing, right? Insignificant. But the cumulative effect, that relentless repetition, it just wears you down. It has a profound psychological impact.
Exactly that. And in geopolitics today, that translates into these persistent, low-level hostile actions. Cyber probes, minor border skirmishes, economic squeezes. Individually, maybe none of them seem big enough to justify a massive conventional military response. But collectively, add them all up over time, and they achieve really significant strategic aims. It's all about calibrated escalation, pushing just hard enough, but staying below that threshold of all-out war, designed specifically to work without triggering that big response.
It's kind of brilliant in a dark way.
It is, strategically. It operates in that gray zone of international relations, that murky space between peace and war.
And that subtlety, that's the key to why it's so effective, isn't it? It gives state actors plausible deniability. That's crucial.
Absolutely crucial.
They can systematically undermine their rivals through these sustained campaigns, disruption, coercion, destabilization, without taking the massive risk of a direct, head-on confrontation, especially with other nuclear-armed powers. It's like, imagine getting 1,000 paper cuts instead of one big wound. None seem critical on their own, but eventually.
Eventually, they weaken the whole system. And the psychological impact on societies, as you touch on, it's profound. Just like each drop seems harmless, each individual incident in this hybrid war, like maybe a cyber attack that disrupts banking for a day, or a proxy skirmish that flares up and dies down, or some subtle economic pressure, it seems manageable in isolation.
Right, you deal with it, you move on.
But the constant nature of it, that low-grade tension, the way it erodes trust in institutions, the financial strain it creates, it all gradually shifts the global balance of power. And it does it without provoking that full-blown World War II-style response, which raises a huge question for all of us, really. If it's that subtle, how do we even spot it? How do we recognize we're in it? What are the actual concrete signs that this drip-by-drip world war is happening right now?
And that's the perfect lead-in to the evidence, the stuff that suggests we might already be in this different kind of World War III. Look at recent polling data, for instance. It shows something like 40.5% of huge number of global strategists predict a major world war involving powers like the US, China, Russia within the next decade.
Yeah.
Sobering numbers.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Those predictions, as high as they are, might actually be underestimating the situation, because they might still be looking for that traditional war, while this non-conventional conflict is already raging, just in a different form. We're maybe seeing the smoke, but not quite identifying the fire for what it is.
That's a critical point. This shift from traditional to hybrid isn't just about new weapons. It's a whole new philosophy of competition between major powers. Traditional war had clear lines, clear forces. Today operates on totally different principles that, well, they challenge our old understanding and make it much harder to pinpoint when a conflict truly begins or ends.
And nowhere is this clearer right now than in Eastern Europe. That's become a real flashpoint, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Those September 2025 drone incursions into Poland triggering Article 4, that's a stark, concrete example of this new reality. And these weren't just off-the-shelf drones, right? Our sources identified them specifically. Gerbera-type drones.
Images from the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service confirm that. So this shows a specific military-grade capability being deployed deliberately by Russia. This wasn't some accident, some hobbyist losing control. It felt like a tool of provocation.
And you see the gravity reflected in Poland's reaction. Prime Minister Donald Tusk saying, Europe is closer to open conflict than at any time since World War II. That's a heady statement.
It really is.
What's particularly revealing, though, looking at some of the Portuguese analysis we reviewed, is that European officials, they're deeply skeptical this was just a mistake, a miscalculation.
They don't buy the oops explanation.
Not at all. They see it as intentional. A deliberate provocation, a test of NATO's alertness, its defenses, its political will. And looking at it through that lens, intent is absolutely crucial. It shifts it from being just an incident to being a calculated move within this gray zone conflict.
It brings home that old saying, geography matters, doesn't it? Maybe more than ever. Polish officials keep saying, we are the ones on the frontier.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, right there bordering Russia and Belarus, it explains why those Eastern European countries have been ringing alarm bells about Russia's intentions for years, often with an urgency that maybe Western allies further away took longer to fully appreciate.
They felt the heat first.
Exactly. So what does this constant calculated pressure actually mean for those countries right there on the front line, living with this day in, day out?
For them, it means living in a state of perpetual calculated pressure. It's a pervasive insecurity. And the broader context in Eastern Europe shows this isn't isolated. It's a systematic pattern. Russia probing, testing NATO's resolve. Think about the Suwałki Gap.
Right, that narrow corridor between Poland and Lithuania. NATO's Achilles heel, some call it.
Exactly, the only land link to the Baltic states. Any move there could effectively cut them off from the rest of the alliance. Then you've got the ongoing militarization of Kaliningrad.
Russia's heavily armed territory on the Baltic Sea.
And the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus, right on NATO's doorstep. These aren't just random military moves. They fit the pattern of classic hybrid warfare tactics. They're designed to test responses, create anxiety, and gradually shift the strategic balance, all without triggering that full Article 5 collective defense clause. It's a relentless campaign, really, trying to rewrite the security map of Europe one drip at a time.
And this is the point we need to drive home for you, our listener. This isn't just some abstract political chess game happening far away. It's a systematic pattern of calculated actions that are impacting entire nations.
Yeah.
And potentially, indirectly, impacting you. It shows how these seemingly small drip-by-drip actions, when you see them all together, create profound geopolitical shifts. They affect stability, trade, even just the basic sense of security across a whole continent.
Changes the whole atmosphere.
So unlike those massive campaigns of World War I and II with the clear battle lines and formal declarations, today's global conflict feels like this complex network. It's interconnected, but the conflicts often seem separate. Modern war doesn't really announce itself with tanks rolling across borders in the same way or huge naval battles deciding the fate of nations. Instead, it plays out across this multi-domain battlefield using a new, often invisible arsenal of 21st century weapons.
Exactly. It's not just about counting tanks or ships anymore. It's about this blend of tactics that lets major powers compete, achieve strategic goals, but crucially, without that direct, all-out, potentially catastrophic confrontation. It's like a global chess game where the pieces are now economic sanctions, cyber attacks, proxy forces, disinformation. Not just armies.
And one of the clearest examples of this new reality is just the sheer number of proxy conflicts around the world. Ukraine obviously is the most prominent, the most tragic example right now.
Absolutely.
Western nations are pouring in military and financial support to help Ukraine defend itself, but very deliberately avoiding direct military engagement with Russia.
Yeah.
The aim is clearly to prevent a wider conventional superpower war.
And that model, that proxy model, it extends far beyond Ukraine. It creates this global web of indirect conflict. Look at the Middle East, that flare-up between Iran and Israel in June 2025.
Right, that 12-day conflict.
It showed how regional powers can clash directly, militarily, while their global patrons, Russia, China, the U.S., offer different levels of support, often quite transactional, without getting directly involved with their own troops.
And wasn't it interesting that neither Russia nor China really jumped in overtly for Iran during that.
Very interesting. It highlighted the conditional nature of these partnerships. They'll support, sure, but maybe not fight directly for you. It's complex, and we see it in Yemen too, right? Iran backing Houthi forces against the Saudi-supported government, another clear case of using proxies to gain influence and challenge rivals.
So this spread of proxy relationships, it creates a global system that kind of mirrors the old alliance systems of past world wars. The engagement is indirect. It's this complex, often murky web of shifting loyalties.
Exactly. Indirect engagement, plausible deniability.
Then there's another huge weapon in this modern arsenal: economic warfare. This whole idea of nations weaponizing trade, supply chains, financial systems to hurt rivals or achieve strategic aims. We hear this term, weaponized interdependence, which captures it perfectly, I think, how the very systems of globalization designed for cooperation have kind of ironically become battlegrounds themselves.
Absolutely. And the tactics here can be varied. Targeting critical infrastructure, disrupting key supply chains, manipulating currency markets, imposing sanctions.
Right.
These are all tools designed to inflict economic pain, to achieve effects that might traditionally have required military action, but using financial and commercial levers instead. China, for instance, has become quite adept at using economic coercion.
We've seen examples, haven't we? Trade restrictions against Australia after political disagreements, leveraging dominance in things like rare earth minerals.
Exactly. It's about creating dependencies and then using that leverage to achieve strategic, political, or even military objectives.
Okay, let's just unpack that for a second. The real power of economic warfare lies in its subtlety, right? A trade restriction here, pulling back some investment there, maybe squeezing a supply chain somewhere else. Each action, viewed alone, might seem like just business, maybe even justifiable commercial policy.
Plausible deniability again.
Exactly. But taken together, collectively, they serve strategic military or geopolitical goals. The key takeaway here is that economic power can now achieve things that maybe only bombs could do in the past, but quietly, often without firing a shot. It's this persistent low-level pressure that can cause significant shifts over time.
And that very subtlety makes it a perfect tool for this drip-by-drip conflict. It chips away at an opponent's economic strength, their social stability, without necessarily triggering that big military response. Then, of course, we have cyber operations. This has exploded into perhaps the most significant new battlefield domain.
It feels like it's everywhere now.
It really does. The digital world allows for these persistent, low-level hostile activities that can cause massive disruption, achieve major strategic goals, but crucially, often with ambiguous attribution. It's hard to prove definitively who did it sometimes.
Which, again, helps avoid conventional escalation.
Precisely. And we've seen some really stark examples. Remember the Salt Typhoon campaign, where state-backed actors reportedly compromised data from millions of citizens in Australia and allied countries?
Yeah, that was huge.
That wasn't just about stealing secrets. It showed how cyber can be used for coercion, for widespread espionage, for weakening an adversary's defenses and public trust from the inside.
And during Taiwan's elections in 2024, remember, there were coordinated cyber attacks hitting government systems, media outlets, and timed perfectly with Chinese military exercises and air incursions nearby.
A classic multi-domain operation.
It wasn't random hacking. It felt like a carefully orchestrated attempt to undermine democracy and exert pressure using both digital and physical means simultaneously.
And that integration, cyber and physical, that really defines this modern multi-domain operational environment. It's not just about hacking anymore. It's about using cyber capabilities to directly support or enable kinetic actions, creating this combined effect that's much greater than the sum of its parts. Imagine crippling an adversary's command and control systems with a cyber attack just as you launch a physical probe.
Paralysis plus pressure.
Exactly.
And beyond cyber attacks on systems, there's also information warfare. This feels like a critical front too, but often harder to see.
Definitely. And deeply insidious.
Here the tactics are things like disinformation campaigns, complex influence operations, psychological warfare, and they're aimed directly at civilian populations, at democratic institutions.
Undermining trust?
Yeah, the goal isn't just to spread lies. It's to erode social cohesion, sow division, weaken political stability from within. If cyber attacks hit the digital infrastructure, the networks, the grid's information warfare targets the human mind. It's a battle for perception, designed to make people doubt their government, their media, maybe even their neighbors, weakening the enemy from the inside out.
And this broad integrated strategy, proxies, economics, cyber, information, it means the geographic scope is huge. It stretches from Eastern Europe through the Middle East all the way to the Indo-Pacific. It creates this global network of challenges that reinforce each other, all hitting Western interests simultaneously.
So, Russian military pressure here, Iranian proxy actions there, Chinese economic coercion somewhere else, North Korean provocations adding to the mix.
Right. It all forces Western countries, particularly the U.S., to constantly juggle resources and attention. It strains response capabilities. It's like trying to fight multiple fires on different continents at the same time. It stretches you thin.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of these new battlefields, these subtle, persistent tactics. But who are the main actors driving this drip-by-drip global struggle? Our analysis here at the Urban Herald, and that of many experts, points towards what's often called the Axis of Upheaval.
China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Now, this isn't a formal military pact like NATO, right? No Article 5 equivalent, no integrated command. It's looser than that.
Much looser. But it's still a strategically aligned coalition bound by a shared objective, challenging the current international order, which they see as dominated by the West, particularly the United States.
And what's really striking is how their strategic convergence seems to be deepening, even if they have tactical disagreements sometimes or competing interests in certain areas.
Yeah, Western analysis sometimes focuses too much on potential cracks between them, hoping they'll fracture. But the evidence overall points towards deeper cooperation, not fragmentation. What really binds them? It's that shared desire to reshape the global system. Each wants it reshaped in ways that benefit them, of course, but they agree on the need for change.
And you see clear evidence of this deepening relationship. Look at the No Limits partnership declared between China and Russia. That's moved way beyond just words now.
Absolutely. It involves systematic cooperation across military, economic, and technological spheres. It seems explicitly designed to counterbalance Western influence. They're not just friendly nations. They appear to be actively collaborating to build an alternative global power structure.
And the mutual support is tangible. Iran supplying military tech, especially those drones, to Russia for use in Ukraine.
Right, and North Korea is sending vast amounts of artillery shells and other weaponry to Moscow.
The fact that this cooperation persists, even thrives, despite significant costs, heavy Western sanctions, diplomatic isolation for Russia and North Korea, it suggests something deeper is going on.
It really does. It points towards a fundamental strategic alignment, not just temporary convenience or opportunism. It seems rooted in a shared long-term vision of challenging the existing order and establishing a more multipolar world, one less dominated by Washington.
And this isn't just happening in one region. The cooperation spans the globe. You see links from Eastern Europe through the Middle East into the Indo-Pacific. It creates that network of reinforcing challenges we talked about, pressuring Western interests on multiple fronts at once. Seeing North Korean ammo in Ukraine or Chinese economic moves impacting a U.S. ally, it feels like part of a bigger coordinated picture.
Indeed. And this strategic convergence really underpins what we can call the long-term competition model. This isn't quite like the Cold War. That was largely ideological, right? Capitalism versus communism, two superpowers vying for global influence.
Right.
Today's competition feels more fundamental. It's a struggle over the actual nature of the international system, its rules, its norms, who gets to lead it.
And China's challenge in particular is incredibly comprehensive, isn't it? It's not just military. It spans economic, technological, diplomatic, and even governance models. They're presenting a whole alternative system to the liberal international order that emerged after World War II.
It's a full-spectrum challenge. They're not just asking for a bigger seat at the table. They seem to want to redesign the table itself, maybe even build a whole new room, according to their own principles.
And crucially, this competition is playing out over very long timelines. We're talking decades, not just years or election cycles.
That's key. It requires a sustained strategic commitment, which, frankly, democratic societies often struggle with because of their shorter political horizons.
Elections every few years.
Exactly. China talks about strategic patience. They seem to understand that systemic change, big global shifts, can be achieved through persistent coordinated pressure across all these domains without necessarily needing that big, dramatic military showdown that could be catastrophic. They seem content to play the long game, building influence methodically, creating economic dependencies, advancing technologically step by step. It's a generational strategy.
And this long game is crystal clear in the technological race. The competition for dominance in AI, quantum computing, advanced semiconductors, space capabilities, this isn't just about commerce.
Not at all. It's fundamentally about future strategic advantage. It echoes the naval arms races before past world wars, but it's happening on a much more complex, pervasive level now. These technologies underpin future military power, economic competitiveness, everything.
And China's pouring massive investment into these areas, right? Combined with determined efforts, both legal and reportedly illegal, to acquire Western technology. This looks very much like a form of technological warfare aimed squarely at shifting the global balance of power in their favor.
It absolutely does. It's not just about building better gadgets. It's about securing the foundations of future national power and geopolitical influence. Which raises that critical, maybe uncomfortable question. Can democratic societies, with our often short-term political focus, actually sustain the kind of strategic commitment needed to compete effectively in this multi-decade marathon?
It's a huge challenge.
It requires a generational shift in how we think strategically, how we plan, how we invest, looking far beyond the next election.
And this new reality, this gray zone conflict, it throws up massive challenges for our traditional ideas about collective defense and deterrence too. Think about NATO's Article 5, the cornerstone, right? An attack on one is an attack on all.
The bedrock of the alliance. But it faces unprecedented dilemmas in this age of hybrid warfare.
Because Article 5 was really designed for a clear conventional attack across a border. Tanks rolling in, missiles flying.
Yeah.
Something unambiguous.
Exactly. Easy to identify the aggressor, easy to see the armed attack. But it really struggles with the fuzzy nature of these modern threats, the cyber attacks, the economic coercion, the disinformation campaigns, the proxy operations.
What is an armed attack in cyberspace? Is a massive cyber attack that cripples a nation's power grid or financial system equivalent to a conventional military strike. Does systematic economic sabotage count?
The answers aren't legally or politically clear-cut, and that ambiguity makes triggering a collective response incredibly difficult.
That Polish drone incident back in September 25 really highlighted this, didn't it?
Yeah.
NATO allies showed solidarity, sent extra air defenses, condemned it strongly.
A strong political response, yes.
But it didn't trigger Article 5. It didn't reach that threshold where all 32 members are obligated to treat it as an attack on themselves.
And that illustrates a crucial point about hybrid tactics. They are deliberately calibrated to stay below that conventional escalation threshold. The aim is to inflict damage, gain advantage, achieve objectives, but without crossing that clear red line that would demand an immediate, full-scale military response from the entire alliance.
Like probing the fence, seeing how much pressure it can take before it breaks.
Exactly. And the ambiguity in Article 5's own language that each member will take such action as it deems necessary that was intended to preserve national decision-making.
Right, flexibility.
But that very flexibility now creates openings for adversaries. They can try to exploit potential disagreements among allies about what constitutes an attack or what the appropriate response should be to these murky hybrid threats. It's a really tricky balancing act for the alliance.
And this is the absolute core of gray zone operations, isn't it? Actions that are definitely hostile, definitely damaging, clearly above normal international competition.
Oh, way above.
But deliberately kept below the threshold of what's universally recognized as conventional warfare. The whole point is to achieve strategic goals while carefully, skillfully avoiding escalation to a big shooting war. It's this constant simmering, low-grade conflict that's hard to define, even harder to counter effectively, but potentially devastating over time.
Precisely. And that means modern deterrence has to adapt dramatically. It can't just be about threatening massive retaliation anymore. It needs to address these persistent, ambiguous, multi-domain threats.
So what does that require?
It requires new capabilities, new doctrines, new ways of thinking that allow for proportionate responses to hybrid aggression without accidentally escalating things into a conventional or even nuclear conflict. It's about having options between doing nothing and going all out.
And the challenge is maybe even greater for democracies.
Right.
Because we have to balance putting up strong defenses against these threats with maintaining the very openness, open societies, open economies, free press that makes us vulnerable to these hybrid tactics in the first place.
It's a fundamental tension. How do you stay secure without sacrificing the freedoms that define you? A constant tightrope walk.
So let's imagine, despite all these gray zone tactics designed to avoid it, what if a full-scale conventional conflict did break out? Who would likely be involved?
Well, on one side, you'd clearly have the Western Alliance, that's NATO's 32 members, led by the U.S. Key players would be the UK, France, Germany, alongside those frontline states like Poland, the Baltics, and now potentially Finland and Sweden, given their recent accession.
A formidable bloc.
Indeed. And on the other side, you'd likely see that coalition we called the Axis of Upheaval. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, directly challenging the Western-led order.
And what about other major countries? India, Brazil, Turkey, South Africa?
The regional powers. They'd face immense pressure to pick a side. My guess is many would try desperately to maintain neutrality, or at least hedge their bets, playing both sides to some extent. It reflects the complex, multipolar, and frankly more transactional nature of global alignments today compared to the Cold War. It wouldn't be a simple two-sided fight. It would be a messy, multi-sided global entanglement.
But lurking behind all of this always are the nuclear weapons. Here's where it gets really critical, isn't it? Their sheer existence fundamentally shapes how conflict is waged today.
Absolutely. You could argue that this whole model of hybrid warfare, of gray zone conflict, is largely a consequence of nuclear deterrence. Because nuclear weapons make a traditional, all-out conventional war between major powers potentially suicidal, unthinkable. The risks are just too high. So major powers needed to find other ways to compete, to pursue their strategic interests without crossing that nuclear threshold.
So hybrid warfare is the workaround.
Yeah.
The way to fight when you can't afford to really fight.
In many ways, yes. It allows for strategic competition below the nuclear level. But, and this is the crucial but, the risk of nuclear use doesn't disappear. It actually increases as conflicts escalate, especially if the core interests or perceived survival of a nuclear-armed state are threatened.
Like a direct threat to their homeland.
Exactly. Or a collapse of their conventional forces. And things like Russia deploying tactical nukes to Belarus, or the ongoing modernization programs in the US, Russia, China. It all ensures that nuclear weapons remain absolutely central to strategic calculations. They cast a long, chilling shadow over this entire complex game.
Okay, so after this really deep dive into what we're calling this unseen conflict, you, listening right now, might be thinking, right, but what does this actually mean for me? What's the so what for ordinary people?
It's a vital question.
And the answer is, recognizing that we might already be in this different kind of World War III goes way beyond just military strategy or geopolitics. It touches your daily life in real, tangible ways, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, ways you might not even realize are connected to this bigger global struggle.
Absolutely. Let's break it down. Think about economic resilience. Your supply chains, the food you buy, the gas for your car, the parts for electronics, they face constant risk of disruption because of this strategic competition. That creates market volatility. It affects prices.
So that sudden spike in the cost of something or an item being unavailable, it might not just be bad luck. It could be a ripple effect from economic warfare tactics being used somewhere else.
Precisely. Then there's technological sovereignty. This affects everything from the security features on your smartphone and the apps you use to the stability and security of the power grid, the internet, banking systems.
Stuff we rely on every single minute.
Exactly. Nations are locked in this fierce race for dominance in critical technologies, semiconductors, AI, 5G, now 6G. And the outcome of that race has direct implications for the security, reliability, and even who controls the digital infrastructure you depend on.
And maybe the most insidious part is information integrity. It's under constant sophisticated attack. This directly challenges our ability to tell fact from fiction, truth from carefully crafted propaganda, in an age saturated with influence operations. What you read online, what you see on social media, even sometimes what you hear on the news, it's all part of this new information battlefield. And it's designed to shape how you think, how you feel, how you vote, often without you consciously realizing it. Your ability to critically assess information becomes a crucial personal defense mechanism.
Which leads directly to the need for digital security skills. These aren't just for IT professionals anymore. They're becoming essential life skills. Why? Because cyber attacks are increasingly targeting not just governments or big companies, but civilian infrastructure that affects you directly.
Like banking systems, utilities, hospitals.
Exactly. Basic cyber hygiene, strong passwords, being wary of phishing scams, securing your home network. It's no longer just good practice. It's almost a form of personal and national resilience in this environment.
And flowing from that, media literacy. It moves from being just a good thing to teach in schools to being, frankly, a civic responsibility. It's an active countermeasure against the flood of information warfare designed to polarize us, erode trust, and weaken our societies from within. It means actively questioning sources, looking for biases, understanding how narratives are built to persuade or manipulate.
It's about being an informed, critical consumer of information.
So when we talk about individual preparedness in this new era, it's not just about having bottled water and a first aid kit for a hurricane anymore. It means focusing on building financial resilience to handle economic shocks, seriously upgrading your digital security practices, and actively sharpening those media literacy skills to navigate this incredibly complex information landscape. It's about empowering yourself against these often invisible threats.
And we absolutely cannot forget the psychological dimension here. Living under this constant, low-level hum of tension, this drip-by-drip conflict, even if it's subconscious, it can create widespread anxiety, stress, fatigue, which, ironically, is often an intended outcome for adversaries to wear down societal morale.
Right.
So building psychological resilience individually and collectively and maintaining strong social solidarity, trust within communities, faith in democratic processes, these actually become vital forms of national defense in themselves, countering the attempts to divide and demoralize us.
Given all of this complex, challenging new reality, how must democratic societies adapt? Strategically, what do we need to do to not just survive, but thrive? It seems obvious that the old deterrence models, based mainly on territorial defense and the threat of massive retaliation, they aren't sufficient anymore.
They need a fundamental evolution, yes. We need new models, new thinking, specifically designed to address these persistent, ambiguous hybrid threats that operate below those old conventional thresholds.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, it requires developing new concepts of collective security. How do alliances like NATO effectively deter and respond to hybrid attacks while still preserving democratic values and open societies? That's the core challenge. How do you build resilience against economic coercion, cyber intrusions, and influence ops without becoming closed off and authoritarian yourself?
You can't fight fire with fire if it means burning down your own house.
Exactly. You have to find ways to be strong and resilient while upholding your core principles.
And the economic side seems crucial here, too.
Absolutely. Democratic nations need to actively develop robust alternatives to authoritarian economic models that weaponize state power and trade for strategic gain. This means things like reducing critical supply chain vulnerabilities, diversifying trade partners, investing heavily to maintain technological superiority in key areas like AI, quantum, biotech, advanced manufacturing.
Preventing adversaries from gaining an economic or technological stranglehold.
Precisely. It's about building economic resilience as a core part of national security.
And finally, there's that point about long-term thinking.
Yes, perhaps the hardest challenge for democracies. We need to find better mechanisms for sustained strategic competition. The short-term focus of democratic politics, driven by election cycles, makes it really hard to maintain consistency and commitment over the decades needed to compete effectively with authoritarian systems that can plan long-term.
How do you maintain focus when governments change every few years?
It requires institutional innovation, maybe more bipartisan consensus on core long-term threats and strategies, ways to ensure that vital long-term investments and policies aren't constantly reversed for short-term political expediency. It's a huge challenge, but essential if we're going to compete effectively in this generational struggle.
So as we wrap up this deep dive here at the Urban Herald, let's just pull the threads together.
Yeah.
We've explored this argument, this evidence, suggesting that World War III might, in fact, already be underway.
But not in the way we expected.
Exactly. Not as that single, massive, conventional clash, but as this fragmented, multi-domain struggle playing out gradually through hybrid warfare, proxy conflicts, economic coercion, intense technological competition. This drip-by-drip war feels like a strategic adaptation, a clever, if deeply unsettling, response to the nuclear age and our interconnected world.
And for those nations right on the front lines like Poland, facing direct hybrid pressure, this isn't theoretical. The reality is clear, it's immediate. Their warnings over the years about how conflict was changing, they really deserve serious attention from allies and partners who maybe haven't felt the heat quite so directly, who might not yet fully grasp the scope and urgency of this challenge. Geography, as we said, still matters profoundly, even in this new kind of war.
Which brings us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, our listener, to take away. The war might not look like the movies. It might not announce itself with trumpets and invasions. But that doesn't make it any less real. It doesn't make it any less consequential for global stability, for democratic values, and yes, even for your own life. So the question really isn't whether World War III is happening anymore. Perhaps the real question is, will we recognize it for what it is in time to respond effectively? Can we adapt to meet the profound challenges it poses to the international system we've known and to the future of democratic governance?
The clock is definitely ticking, and the stakes for the international system, for democratic societies, and yes, for your daily life and future, they honestly couldn't be higher. The future really will be shaped by how well democracies manage to adapt to this complex, ambiguous new reality.
The choice and the responsibility that comes with it, the responsibility to understand, to adapt, to act, it still remains ours, but perhaps not for much longer.
We sincerely hope this analysis today from the team here at the Urban Herald has given you some valuable insights, maybe a fresh perspective on one of the most critical, if often unseen, global issues of our time.
Stay informed, stay critical, stay vigilant. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Herald.